Hi everyone! Thanks so much for joining me on my channel. Make sure that you hit the like and subscribe button if you haven't done that yet. Today we're going to be talking about hot foiling on colored cardstock. This is a big trial and error experiment for me. I did a lot of work on this and I feel like this is a great way to mass produce cards, but you do need to go into it with some knowledge. So today I'm going to try to impart that knowledge on you with 3 tips that I discovered that I feel like will make this so much easier for you. After the tips, we'll work through mass producing some cards with our scraps, with our messed up pieces, with our great pieces, and I'll show you how you can keep from creating too much waste with these foiling cards while you're getting the hang of it. Okay, so let's get right into it with tip number 1. That's using the correct cardstock. So cardstock for hot foiling needs to be as slick as possible. Now with a lot of colored cardstocks, this is difficult. They have a little bit of grit to them. And normally I love that, but with hot foiling, that can mean that your foil sticks to parts of the paper that it shouldn't. So this is the one, I went through all of my cardstocks. I tried Simon Says Stamp, Gina K, Altenew, and Lawn Fawn. So we're going to go through those things. I will take this off and show you how much this sticks. This was the worst one that I did, and it was Simon Says Stamp, and I pretty much could tell that from how I was feeling. I think that if you have this trouble with the first one, there's some things you could adjust and possibly make this right. But if you're also going to do something like stencil on the cardstock and do some coloring in, you can use your mono sand eraser and try to remove these areas. But on colored cardstock, that seems to make it a little dull, or sometimes if it's a white core cardstock, you erase down to the core and cause problems. So you can see all the places that this stuck. So drum roll, this is the best cardstock that I tested. Now, did I get better at doing it as things went along and adjusted some things? Maybe that's the case, but Lawn Fawn cardstock worked the best. Now, not the ones that are in the multi-packs. This is the cardstock that comes a single color and in one pack. So I will, of course, link that in the description for you so that I can show you. I'm sure there are other cardstocks out there that work this well, but these are just the ones that I had in my stash. I wasn't going to go buy anything new to try out. I wanted to use what I already had. Okay, and here's how it looks. I see one little area where it transferred down towards the bottom, which is really easy to take care of, but everywhere else I did really well. So this little spot right here, it transferred, but that's an easy cover up, or I can just erase something. So I was really impressed with that. That doesn't mean don't try your Gina K and your Altenew. I think that I learned over time how to make this better, but it might be easier to try something that you know has had good results. Let's talk about tip number 2, and that's adjusting the pressure. So you'll notice this is that same red Lawn Fawn cardstock. I'm using the same foil color, and I'm using a shim. Can you see that in between my 2 pads right here? I just used a cardstock shim. And let me show you the difference that pressure makes. So with colored cardstock, I feel like the less pressure, the better. So this one is too much pressure, and you'll see what happens. So here it is. So with that extra shim, it places more pressure, which allows part of this cardstock to grab on. And so I feel like less pressure is helpful. Look at where it sticks on this. Definitely got more stuck that will cause me some problems later. Don't throw those away though. If you mess them up, hang on to them, especially colored cardstock. You can cut out parts of it and use it. But that is just one of the reasons why I would say no shim with colored cardstock. Okay, so we're on to my last tip about foiling. This tip does not seem logical, but for some reason it's true, and I'm going to show you that it is. It's that the type of foil color that you use seems to make a difference. So I love this Aura foil, I believe is what it's called, from Spellbinders. It's got that holographic look to it, but it did not transfer as well. I'm going to show you what it looks like. It transferred the image with not too much cast off, but it still did not get the entire image. So it missed a little bit of the image, but it also overfoiled even without using a shim. So I'm going to point up here to where the overfoil is. Do you see that right there? That normally on like hammer mill cardstock is going to wipe off, but it does not do that on this colored cardstock. So you can still use that image if you want, but for me, that was a no-go on that color of foil. So let's look at matte gold. Matte gold is my favorite color of foil. So this one I did use a shim in, so of course you've got some cast off with it. But let me show you without a shim. It really does pretty well. It doesn't do as good as another color that I'm going to tell you is the best, but it still does a pretty good job. It's not overfoiling in that area, just that overfoil in that top petal and at the edge of the plate. So here's the matte foil without a shim. So I tried it with a shim because I'd had some trouble with it sticking everywhere, but I would say doing it without a shim looks better. Let me show you. It doesn't get all the areas perfectly like the other one does, but it doesn't do the overfoiling. So right where I was touching there, it didn't really get it. I'm gonna let this cool and show you what it looks like. Okay, so let's take off this matte gold and see where it didn't foil. It did a good job about not transferring to the rest of the page, but I'm gonna do a freeze frame and show you the area that it doesn't foil. Now, granted, I still think this image is usable and you could add some gold pen or something to try to cover this up, but right there, it didn't completely foil. Okay, let's do another drum roll. This is my favorite color of foil. I feel like it does better than any other option, and that is just the regular old shiny gold foil. So I am going to mass produce some cards with this shiny gold foil, but I want to show you how it looks on this blue piece. I love this blue color cardstock from Lawn Fawn. It's something that has just always been one of my favorite colors, so I am excited to mass produce some cards and kind of build up my stash. So we'll talk about mass producing these. Using a foiled image is an easy way to mass produce. Look how beautiful that gold looks. I think foiled images are just so elegant, you don't have to add a whole lot of extra to them. So let's get into that part of the video now. Let's talk about scraps. Do not throw away colored cardstock. It is expensive and you can still use it. And the way that I've cut these sheets, I've cut them all as your basic 4.25. See how I messed this one up? This one's a 4.25 by 5.5, so an A2 card. And I've cut the other down. So my good image is cut down to a 4 by 5.25 so that I can layer these two. The other thing that seemed to make doing this great is having some type of sentiment. So this sentiment hot foil plate from Pinkfresh it cuts out so many different options. So it gives you lots of different foiled options. I thought it would look really cool to have monotone cards. So to have some cards that had their foiling directly on them. Look how great that does. So I will link that in the description. But I did a purple one and I did a blue set. And then with the red card that we're going to do, we're going to use my regular white sentiments and show you the difference and what that looks like. So an easy way to make this image really stand out is to add some Distress Oxide ink around the edges. I'm going to use black soot with the blue because it really just makes it look like a shadow. This piece is the piece that I messed up, so this is going to be my very back layer, so you want to do both layers. This one I'll do a little darker than my front layer, but doing this is going to create a spotlight effect on the card, as if your foil needed any more spotlight, but it just makes it extra awesome. So I think that this is an easy way. You can do this in a mass-produced way. You can just outdo the edges of each card, and it really adds that extra little bit that just makes them very special. The other reason to do this is if you have some little foil flecks. So did you see I used the mono sand eraser and I wiped off, there's just some teeny tiny foil flecks, but those would show up on the edge of my card. So I went and I can use my eraser and then I can go back in with the Distress Oxide and cover up that lightness, because you know the mono sand kind of makes it a little dull and makes it a little lighter in color. So you can go cover that up, and then now I'm going to do this top piece with a slightly lighter hand on my Distress Oxide, and that's just going to make this really pop. Okay, so I added a little bit of texture. I feel like adding some texture to a card really helps with this foil. It just gives it that little extra. Like I said, I'm all about the extra, aren't I? So I'm adding this metallic thread, and then I'm covering up, popping everything up, and placing this piece down. Now all that's left to do is to pop on the sentiment. I picked Celebrate for this one, and I'm just gonna glue it on right here, and this card is done. And looks amazing. So for the purple, I did it similar to the navy, but I'm going to use Villainous Potion as my shadow along the edges. The black soot was just a little bit too much for that, so this one worked out really well with this color of purple paper. So this card is similar to the other one, but I'm going to use a bow on this one from that metallic thread instead of wrapping the thread around it, and going to use one of my purple sentiments, and that just makes each card unique. So similar, but not the exact same. For the last card, I wanted to do something a little bit different, so I decided to add some gold splatter. I'm using Altenew's metallic watercolor for my splatter. I really like their gold, and it matches this foil color well. This is also an idea. I thought if I used some of my pieces that had some foil transfer on them, I might be able to cover it up and just have it look like splatter. So it's one of those things that you could play around with and maybe even use some of your pieces you didn't think were quite perfect. Okay, here's how this looks up close. This is something, of course, you need to let it dry before you finish the rest of the card. I'm going to add some gold metallic thread again, just to keep with the same theme. So this card's final looks like this. So to remind everybody of the 3 tips before we end this video, 1 is the right type of cardstock. 2, gold foil, especially the shiny, does the best when foiling on colored cardstock. Who knows why, but it seems to be the case. Also, not too much pressure. Maybe don't add a shim when you're using colored cardstock. I hope that everybody enjoyed this video. Make sure if you're going to go shopping today or anytime soon, you go through the links in the description. Those will show you everything that I used, and they do provide a small commission to me at no cost to you, so I appreciate it so much when somebody uses one of those. And if you haven't done it yet, please make sure you hit the subscribe and like button. More than 85% of people watching this are not subscribed. It doesn't hurt you to subscribe, and it helps me so much. I appreciate you all. Thank you for your support, and I'll see you soon. Bye.